My beloved child. Stop scrolling for just a moment. Do not move past these words as though they are ordinary, because something has shifted in the unseen, and the person you love has reached a point they never believed they would reach. They are not standing before you with pride anymore. They are not hiding behind silence, distance, excuses, or confusion. In the deepest chamber of their heart, they are begging with folded hands for one chance to speak to you. Just once. Just long enough to tell you what happened, what changed, and why the truth can no longer remain buried. Pause here and breathe slowly, because what you are about to hear was meant to find you at a very precise moment. You may have wondered why your heart has felt unusually restless. You may have awakened with their name moving through your thoughts before you could stop it. You may have felt a sudden heaviness, followed by a strange warmth, as though someone far away was trying to reach you without words. That feeling was not created by weakness. It was the echo of an emotional turning point that has already begun. Something huge has happened. Not something loud enough for the world to notice. Not something that would appear in a public announcement. It happened behind closed doors, in a moment when the person you love could no longer escape the truth. A conversation took place. A realization arrived. A hidden detail came into the light. And in one unforgettable instant, everything they believed about you, about themselves, and about the distance between you was shaken. Stay with this message, because the most important part has not yet been revealed. For a long time, this person believed they still had time. Time to think. Time to delay. Time to keep their feelings protected behind careful words. They convinced themselves that you would remain emotionally available, even if they did not treat your heart with the tenderness it deserved. They assumed the connection would wait for them. They believed that no matter how long the silence continued, some invisible door between you would remain open. But something happened that made them realize the door may not stay open forever. They saw a version of the future without you. It did not come as a dramatic vision. It came through something simple, almost ordinary. Perhaps they heard your name spoken by someone else. Perhaps they saw a photograph, remembered a promise, reread an old message, or passed a place connected to you. Perhaps someone asked them a question they were not prepared to answer. The moment looked small from the outside, but inside them, it became an earthquake. They suddenly understood that losing you would not feel like losing a conversation. It would feel like losing a home they had not recognized until they were standing outside of it. My child, they tried to resist that realization. They told themselves it was only nostalgia. They called it temporary emotion. They attempted to continue their day, but something within them refused to return to normal. Your voice kept returning. Your kindness returned. The way you listened when they did not know how to explain themselves returned. Even the moments they once misunderstood began to reveal a different meaning. They started seeing how many times you were loving them while they were still questioning whether love was present. They remembered the patience in your silence. They remembered the things you noticed without being told. They remembered how you stayed gentle even when confusion entered the connection. And then came the memory they had been trying hardest to avoid, the moment your energy changed. You did not necessarily shout. You may not have given a final speech. You simply became tired in a quiet way. You stopped trying to force understanding. You began protecting the parts of yourself that had been left exposed for too long. Your love did not vanish, but it stopped chasing. Your heart did not become cold, but it began learning boundaries. That change frightened them more than any argument could have. Do not skip now, because this is where the hidden truth begins to open. The person you love recently discovered that your distance was not a game. It was not manipulation. It was not an attempt to make them run after you. You stepped back because remaining in the same emotional cycle was slowly draining the light from you. You had been giving from a place deeper than they understood, and every unanswered question became heavier. Every mixed signal asked your heart to carry another burden. Every delay made you wonder whether your love was being honored or merely depended upon. They are finally beginning to understand the cost of what you carried. And that understanding did not come gently. It came when someone told them something about you that they did not expect to hear. The person who spoke may not have known the full history between you, but their words landed with unusual force. They said that you had changed. They said you seemed stronger, quieter, more focused. They said you were no longer waiting for life to choose you. You were beginning to choose yourself. At first, the person you loved tried to appear calm. They nodded. They remained silent. They pretended the information did not affect them. But inside, one question rose above every other thought: what if I waited too long? That question followed them. It followed them into the quiet of the evening. It sat beside them when the noise faded. It entered the room when they tried to sleep. They imagined you laughing without them, healing without them, building a life that no longer revolved around whether they were ready. And for the first time, they realized that your growth was not a threat. It was evidence that heaven had been strengthening you while they were hesitating. This is why their hands are folded now. Not because they want to control you. Not because they believe one emotional conversation can erase everything. They are begging because they finally understand that a single honest moment with you is worth more than all the pride they once protected. There is something they need to confess. They did not stay silent because they felt nothing. They stayed silent because they felt more than they knew how to carry. Your presence awakened parts of them that had been sleeping for years. You made them imagine commitment, vulnerability, and a future that required them to become emotionally honest. That possibility filled them with hope, but it also exposed every fear they had carefully hidden. They became afraid that they would disappoint you. Afraid that you would see their imperfections. Afraid that if they allowed you fully into their heart, they would no longer be able to pretend they did not need anyone. So they created distance before you could see how deeply they cared. But distance did not protect them. It only gave their feelings more room to grow in secret. They began noticing you in everything. A certain song carried your energy. A familiar hour of the day reminded them of your conversations. Small victories felt incomplete because they wanted to tell you. Difficult moments became heavier because your comfort was no longer close. They may have smiled around others, continued their routine, and acted as though they had accepted the separation, but in the quiet, your absence became a language they could not ignore. Still, they delayed. They told themselves they would reach out tomorrow. Then tomorrow became another week. They imagined a perfect opening, a perfect explanation, a perfect moment when neither of you would feel guarded. But perfection became another hiding place. While they searched for the right words, the emotional space between you widened. Then came the event that changed everything. Listen carefully, because even they are still trying to understand why it affected them so deeply. They learned that another person has begun to recognize your value. This does not necessarily mean you have entered another relationship. It may be someone admiring your strength, speaking highly of you, or showing the consistency you once wished to receive from the person you love. But the possibility was enough. The thought that someone else could step into the space they had neglected forced them to face a truth they had avoided: your love was a gift, not a guarantee. For the first time, jealousy was not the strongest emotion. Regret was. They were not simply afraid that another person might take their place. They were devastated by the realization that they had left the place empty. They saw how often you had offered them opportunities to come closer. You asked honest questions. You created moments where truth could have been spoken. You gave reassurance when they expected judgment. Even when you were hurt, a part of you still hoped they would choose courage. They remember those moments now. They replay your words and hear meanings they missed the first time. They understand the pauses in your voice. They notice the sadness behind sentences they once treated casually. And one particular memory has become impossible for them to escape. There was a moment when you almost told them how deeply their actions were affecting you. You may have stopped yourself because you did not want to sound demanding. You may have changed the subject because you feared your honesty would push them farther away. But they saw something in your eyes, your message, or your silence. At the time, they ignored it. Now they know that was the moment your heart began preparing to release what it could no longer carry alone. Something inside them broke when they understood this. My child, this is not being revealed so that you will abandon your wisdom and run backward without discernment. Heaven is not asking you to forget your healing. You are being shown this because the truth of their heart is finally moving toward the surface, and you deserve to understand the energy you have been sensing. Their regret is real. Their longing is real. But what happens next must be built upon truth, not urgency alone. This is why they are asking for one conversation. They know they cannot demand another chance. They know you may not respond the way they hope. They know your heart may be guarded now. Still, something within them is saying, speak before silence becomes permanent. They have rehearsed the conversation countless times. In one version, they begin with an apology. In another, they explain what frightened them. Sometimes they imagine you saying nothing, and that silence terrifies them. Sometimes they imagine you turning away, and they feel the full weight of what they delayed. But there is also another vision they cannot stop seeing, you listening with calm eyes while they finally tell you everything. Not the polished version. Not the safe version. Everything. They want to tell you that they checked for signs of you when they pretended not to care. They want to admit that they noticed when your messages became shorter, when your warmth became more careful, when you stopped reaching first. They want to confess that every change in you affected them, but they allowed pride to keep their response hidden. They want to tell you about the night they almost contacted you. Their hand hovered over your name. The message was written, erased, rewritten, and erased again. They were afraid the words would be too late. They were afraid you would respond with politeness instead of love. They were afraid that the emotional home they once felt in you had already closed its doors. So they said nothing. But now silence feels more dangerous than rejection. Stay until the end, because there is a deeper reason this urgency has appeared now. The huge event was not only what they heard about you. It was what they discovered about themselves afterward. They realized they had been repeating an old pattern. Before you entered their life, they had learned to associate closeness with risk. Somewhere in their past, love became connected to disappointment, abandonment, or emotional confusion. They promised themselves they would never again become so attached that another person could affect their peace. Then you arrived. You did not force your way into their heart. You entered slowly, through trust, laughter, understanding, and small moments of unexpected safety. By the time they realized how much you mattered, you were already connected to a part of them they had kept closed for years. Instead of protecting the connection, they tried to protect themselves from it. They became inconsistent when their feelings became intense. They withdrew when they most wanted closeness. They appeared uncertain because certainty made them feel vulnerable. They may have confused you by moving toward you and then away, offering warmth and then silence, hope and then hesitation. You thought their inconsistency meant you were not enough. But the truth is that your presence revealed how unprepared they were to receive something genuine. That truth does not erase your pain. It does not make every action acceptable. But it explains why their heart remained tied to you even while their behavior seemed to suggest otherwise. Now the pattern has become visible to them. The conversation, the information about your growth, and the possibility of losing you joined together like pieces of a hidden message. They saw that if they remained silent, they would not only lose you. They would lose the opportunity to become the person they were meant to be through honesty. This frightened them. But it also awakened them. For the first time, they are not asking, "How do I protect myself?" They are asking, "How do I stop hurting the person I love?" That question has brought them to their knees emotionally. There is an apology forming inside them that is different from every apology they imagined before. It is not focused on convincing you to return. It is focused on acknowledging what you experienced. They want to say, "I understand why you stepped away. I understand why you stopped explaining. I understand that you were not asking for perfection. You were asking me to show up." They know those words may not be enough. But they also know the truth must be spoken, even if the outcome remains uncertain. My child, your heart may be reacting strongly as you hear this. Part of you may want to believe every word, while another part remembers every night you questioned whether they cared. You are allowed to hold both feelings. You can love someone and still honor the lessons their absence taught you. You can listen without surrendering your boundaries. You can remain compassionate without abandoning yourself. Heaven has not strengthened you so that you will return to confusion. Heaven has strengthened you so that when truth arrives, you will be able to recognize whether it is accompanied by change. Because words can open a door, but only consistency can keep it open. The person you love is beginning to understand this. They know a dramatic confession cannot replace the steady presence you needed. They know one emotional night cannot erase months of uncertainty. Yet they are hoping that one conversation might become the beginning of a different path. And here is what they have not told anyone. They have already made a decision. This decision is connected to something they were holding on to. Something that kept them divided between the life they were living and the life their heart wanted. It may involve a commitment, a fear, an outside influence, or a belief about themselves. Whatever it is, they have chosen to release it. The decision was not easy. It required them to disappoint someone, confront an uncomfortable truth, or step away from a situation that gave them temporary security. They knew that as long as they continued holding on to it, they could never approach you with a whole heart. So they ended something internally before they ever reached for you externally. That is part of what happened. But there is more. Someone close to them noticed the change. They asked why this person suddenly seemed distant, emotional, and unable to focus. At first, they avoided answering. Then your name was spoken. The room became silent. The person you love finally admitted that they may have made the greatest emotional mistake of their life. They confessed that they had pushed away the one person who saw them clearly. They said they did not know whether you would ever trust them again. And then, with a voice that surprised even them, they said, "I have to talk to them. Even if they only listen once." The person sitting with them asked, "What will you say?" They could not answer immediately. Tears came before words. Not because they wanted sympathy. Not because they were trying to create a dramatic moment. The tears came because your love had become impossible to describe without confronting how carelessly they had handled it. They finally said, "I will tell them the truth. All of it. Do not turn away yet, because what all of it means is far bigger than a simple confession of love. There is a secret connected to their silence. It is not necessarily a secret of betrayal. It is something they believed would change the way you saw them. Something they were ashamed, frightened, or uncertain to reveal. They convinced themselves that keeping it hidden was protecting the connection. In reality, the secret created the distance they feared. They now understand that you were reacting to an incomplete story. You felt their hesitation but did not know its source. You sensed something unspoken but could not identify it. At times, you may have blamed yourself because the truth was not available to you. You searched your own behavior for answers that belonged to their hidden struggle. This is why your intuition never fully released the connection. Part of you knew there was more. You were not imagining the depth. You were not inventing the bond. You were feeling a love that had become trapped behind fear and secrecy. But now the secret is moving toward the light. The person you love has reached the point where losing your respect through honesty feels less frightening than losing you through silence. They are preparing to tell you what happened before they met you, what changed after you entered their life, and why they suddenly pulled away when the connection was becoming stronger. They are also preparing to tell you what happened very recently, the moment that made them fold their hands and ask heaven for one final opportunity. That moment came when they received something they were never supposed to see. It may have been a message, a private conversation, a forgotten note, or words spoken when someone believed they were not listening. Whatever form it took, it revealed how deeply your heart had been affected. They learned something about the way you defended them, waited for them, or quietly wished them well even while you were hurting. They discovered that your love had remained honorable, even in your absence. And that truth crushed the last excuse they had. They could no longer tell themselves that you had never cared. They could no longer pretend that the connection was only in their imagination. Evidence stood before them that while they were protecting their pride, you had been protecting the memory of what you believed the two of you could become. Their hands shook. Their breathing changed. They sat down because the emotional weight was too strong to carry standing. And then they whispered something that heaven heard. They said, "Please, let me speak to them once. I do not need control over the outcome. I only need the courage to tell the truth." My child, that prayer has created movement. You may soon notice something unusual. A message at an unexpected time. A familiar sign. A name appearing repeatedly. A dream that feels more vivid than ordinary thought. These things are not instructions to surrender your judgment. They are reminders to remain spiritually awake. Something is approaching. But before it reaches you, you must remember who you have become. You are no longer the version of yourself that accepts fragments and calls them a future. You are no longer required to shrink your needs so someone else can remain comfortable. You have learned that love should not constantly make you question your worth. You can hear their truth from a place of strength. You can allow the conversation without promising the ending. This is important, because the person you love is hoping for reconciliation, but heaven is focused on revelation first. The truth must be uncovered before the path can be chosen. There are things you need to hear, not so you will be persuaded, but so your heart can finally understand what it has been carrying. And when they speak, one sentence will change the meaning of everything. It will explain the silence. It will explain the sudden distance. It will explain why they watched you from afar but did not approach. It will explain why they are begging now. They have practiced this sentence alone. Each time they try to say it aloud, their voice breaks. They know that once the words leave their mouth, they cannot return to hiding. They know you may look at them differently. But they also know this truth is the only bridge left between the two of you. They are coming toward that bridge now. Slowly. Fearfully. Honestly. Do not mistake their fear for a lack of love. Yet do not mistake their love for completed transformation. Let their actions reveal what their emotions are promising. Something huge has happened, but the full consequence of it has not yet unfolded. The conversation they are begging for may become a turning point, not only for the relationship, but for the way both of you understand the past. You are about to learn that certain moments were not what they appeared to be. A decision you thought was made against you may have been made from fear. A silence you interpreted as indifference may have contained an internal battle. A door you believed was closed may have remained guarded from the other side. But there is one more truth. The person you love is not only afraid that you will refuse to speak. They are afraid that you will listen calmly, forgive them in your heart, and still choose to walk away. That possibility is what brought them to folded hands. They realize forgiveness does not always mean reunion. They realize your peace may no longer depend on receiving answers. They understand that while they were delaying, heaven was teaching you how to live without the closure you deserved. Now they are racing against the strength you gained in their absence. And yet, something within them believes the connection has not completed its purpose. There is still a promise unspoken. There is still a choice unmade. There is still a moment waiting between you that neither time nor distance has been able to erase. My child, the next part of this revelation will uncover what they saw, who spoke your name, and the exact truth they are preparing to confess. But before that can be revealed, you must understand this: they are no longer asking to speak because they fear being alone. They are asking because they finally know why heaven allowed your paths to meet. And the reason is connected to a promise they made about you on the very night something huge happened. A promise no one expected. A promise that could change what happens next. But just as they were preparing to reach you, someone entered the room, placed something in their hands, and said words that left them completely speechless. When they looked down and realized what they were holding, your name was written across the first line.